What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the Handmade Business Secrets podcast. Today I want to give you 4 keys to a healthy marriage while you're building your business. Let's dive in. Well, hey guys, welcome back to the show. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, check out the podcast. For those of you that are listening to the podcast, check this out on YouTube. But I want to talk to you today specifically about really 4 key principles that some of them I got right and some of them I didn't, to maintaining and even cultivating a healthy marriage while you're trying to build your business at the same time. If you've ever tried to build a business and maintain relationships, you know that this is a challenge. One of the biggest challenges when building a business is that you kind of have to almost go into the cave and come out when you've killed the animal, right? Like there's so much that you have to get done, and it's very easy to put off important things in our life, especially our relationships with our spouse, with our kids, with our friends, with our church, with our community. The way that I would hope that you would do this is you would learn from some of my mistakes, and I'll tell you some of those in today's episode. Learn from my mistakes and do this the right way from the get-go. Make sure you stick around for the whole video or the whole podcast for the last one, because I think the 4th point that I'm going to give you today is really, really important. And so, number 1, the first key, I believe, to a healthy marriage while building your business is just being on the same page with the same goals. One of the biggest challenges that most people face is that what they want and what their spouse wants are very different things. And it's hard to reconcile those differences. And if you're married or if you're in a relationship, you know that compromise is part of a relationship. There needs to be a buy-in from your spouse on whatever it is that you're doing. If you do not have buy-in, if you're leading out of arrogance that I know what I'm doing, I'm gonna blaze this trail, I'm gonna do this, I got this, just hang on for the ride, that's not gonna work. At least in the short term. It may end up being a decent thing down the road, but you're going to do some damage in that relationship from the get-go. And so how do you get buy-in? Well, you cast a clear vision. You cast a really clear vision to your spouse of where you want to be and where you want to end up. A lot of times our spouses, especially if you're watching this or listening to this and you have a job that you just really don't love, the people that you work with don't value what you value, if it's just a hostile work environment, whatever it may be that may cause you to not love your job, sometimes it's hard for our spouses that aren't in it all day, every day, to understand that, to wrap their minds around the fact that, man, I really want to do something that I enjoy and that I'm passionate about. And a lot of times the spouse just sees the check that comes in every 2 weeks or every month or every week from that job. And so their initial reaction is always going to be fear. It's fear of, well, if you go do this thing, if you start this business, what if we lose our consistent income? What if we lose our check, right? And that's a terrifying thing for all of our spouses, right? Especially those of you that are watching that maybe you're the sole breadwinner, whether you be a husband or a wife. And so it's really important to make sure that we cast a clear vision of what our goals are and where we want to go and why. And so this can feel a little scary, a little intimidating at times, because we've got things that our spouses want that may need to be delayed for a short period of time, whether that be 12 or 18 months. And ultimately, what's so important about this first key is that we have to get long-term minded together. And so that's one of the biggest gaps that I see a lot of times in relationships, especially with entrepreneurs in that relationship or business owners, is that if there is a gap, it's usually because the spouse is very short-term minded. The entrepreneur is very long-term minded, thinking in terms of years or even decades, when the spouse is thinking in terms of weeks. What you have to do is you have to really cast that clear vision to say, okay, we might struggle for 12 months, or we might struggle for 6 months, or we might not make as much money as we want for this short amount of time, but in the long run, this is what our life is going to end up looking like. And so that's the first key to a healthy marriage while building your business. The second one, which is super, super important, this is arguably the most important one, is over-communication. What happens is when you are not running a business or starting a business, you don't feel like you have free time, but you've got free time. You know, you work your day job, you come home, you kick your shoes off, you plop down on the couch, y'all eat dinner together, you hang out with the kids. Your work day is over from that 9 to 5 or 7 to 3 or whatever it is that you work. What happens is when you start trying to grow a business, well, you're having to put in extra time, right? Because you've got your day job and you've got your side hustle, your business that you're trying to launch, and it takes energy to get the ball up the hill. That ball is not going to roll itself up the hill. Somebody's got to push it. If you don't over communicate about your schedules, about your plans, you'll come home, spouse is expecting you guys to hang out tonight, and you were thinking all day, I need to get home and I need to get busy. I need to start working on my business. I need to hop online and start doing this, or I need to go out to the garage or to the shop and start working on this, or whatever that might be. It will cause a lot of tension in your relationship. And so one of the best things you can do is you can over communicate about your plans every day of the week. And so what my wife and I try to do, and we have weeks where we do great on this. We have weeks that we're not so great, but we're consistently trying to get better. And that is on Sunday night, we sit down with our calendar for the week and we say, okay, what do we know as of right now that we have every day? What are we working on every day? All this is malleable and it does change because that's just how life is. But we at least try to get a game plan of like, what are the big important key aspects of what we're doing this week, and how can we work with each other to make sure that all this becomes a reality? And the second part of this is that it can't just revolve around you. You can't just basically shut your spouse's schedule down completely. Well, you can't go do this, you can't have fun here, you can't plan this or do this because I've got this thing I've got to do. That is not going to be that's not going to work. And so one thing that is really important to my wife is that she always gets a chance to get out of the house and work out. And so that's one of the first things we always put on the calendar is I want her to be able to go work out and not have to stress out about my schedule. So that's my sacrifice every day, that I'm coming home from my day job and I'm covering the kids while she goes and works out. That's like a non-negotiable for me and how I serve her. Okay, from there, if there's anything else that needs to happen or needs to get done, and it's not so much anymore now that my business is off the ground, that I'm working late into the evenings and doing things, but occasionally there is a project that I'm working on or something that's important that I'm trying to move the ball forward on, that I'll just say, hey, I'm a little behind on this project and I didn't get a chance to work on it during the day or over the course of Friday or whatever that might be. And so I'm going to try to work on that tonight if I can. So if we can get the kids down early and I can just have like an hour of uninterrupted time or 2 hours of uninterrupted time, that would be great on this night of the week. And we can agree to it. But what doesn't work is when you show up at home and you've got all these plans that you thought you were going to be able to just hit the ground running with that you never communicated, and that this can cause a lot of tension. And what it does is it will create this idea in your spouse's mind that, well, what they're working on is more valuable or more important than our family or our relationship. And you know that's not true, but you're just very focused trying to hammer out and do what you're trying to do. You have to be extremely over-communicative with your spouse. Okay, number 3, this is the third key to a healthy marriage while building your business, and this one's so true. You have to increase your level of intimacy. And so I know you're listening to this and you're like, man, this is a woodworking podcast and you're talking about intimacy with my spouse, right? This seems totally off topic, but it's not, because most people fail in business not because they don't have the skills to do the thing. They fail because they don't have the emotional stability or the stability within their own home life to sustain what they're trying to build. And so this is super important, super relevant to what we're trying to do. So increased intimacy. Why is this so important? Because you're going to have less time together. So you have to make the time that's together more valuable. And so how do we do this? Well, we do this a couple ways. We do this by being really intentional with our conversations. Knowing your spouse's love language. I don't know if you're watching this, if you've ever come across the 5 love languages, but it's a book. There's a podcast on it. There's tons of YouTube videos on it. You should learn what the 5 love languages are, and you should learn what your spouse's love language is, the one that really drives them and helps them feel connected to you. And again, what's so important about this is it's not how you like to give love. Some of us like to give love because we're touchy-feely, or we love to give gifts, or we love spending quality time. But what does your spouse receive? How does she or how does he want to receive love? And that's what, when you're together, you have to be intentional about giving love in the way that they want to receive it. When it comes to increased intimacy, obviously what you're already thinking of when I say the word intimacy, that's really important that you schedule and make time for that. And scheduling, it sounds boring, but it's actually kind of freeing to be able to do that. So make sure that you're doing that. And number 2, make sure that your conversations are intentional, that it's more than just, how was your day? That's what we all ask each other when we get home. That's what millions of spouses across the world ask one another. And it becomes stale asking that question. So start trying to be more intentional in that conversation. Is what made you smile today? What made you happy today? What was something that you laughed really hard at today? What was something that made you sad today? And get into the details of your spouse's day, and then listen. One of my biggest downfalls, just as a spouse in general, as trying to be a good husband, is that I'm always scheming or dreaming or thinking or planning. And so I've always struggled with being fully present when I'm with my wife, giving her my full attention, my full affection, and making sure that she understands that I'm not here in body, but my mind and my spirit are somewhere else. Making sure that my mind is engaged, my heart is engaged. I'm fully connected to her in that moment. And this is something that I'm still not a batting 1,000 on, but I'm getting better. And I'm working really hard to stay super intentional with that. The best thing you can have when you're trying to build your business is your wife or your husband fully on board with you. Like, yes, you're not neglecting all these other needs in our life to build your business, but you're being really intentional with me and the kids. You're being really intentional with your day job. You're being really intentional with our relationships, and you're building this thing. I got you. I got your back. And so here's number 4. This is the last key to a healthy marriage when building your business, and that is to rest really well together. And so one of the things that I just believe in 100%, I'm a pastor, I'm a Christian, I believe in a Sabbath, in a day of the week that you don't work, that you don't do anything. And Sabbath is not necessarily just sitting on the couch all day. It can be like going for a hike or doing something that invigorates you, but it's resting your mind from work. It's resting your mind from all the things that you have going on and just being present with the people that's around you. I really struggled with resting well and resting with my spouse. One of the ways that we do this is we just look at our schedule each week and we determine what day is going to be our Sabbath day. What day are we not going to do anything? Are we just going to grill, hang out, maybe take the kids to the park, go get a special treat, and just be a family together? And this is one of those things that no matter how crazy the week is, if you can make it a consistent part of your life, will always replenish and renew your relationship with your spouse and your family. This is something that is a non-negotiable for us. It's not perfect. We're not 100% every single year, 52 weeks out of the year. We don't have 52 Sabbaths, but we try our best to come as close as we possibly can to hitting that number because it's so important. Because think about this. If you work 6 days out of the week and then you have a Sabbath and you're going to work 6 days and have a Sabbath and you miss that Sabbath and you work, well, now you've worked for 13 days straight. Okay, 13 days straight. You're not going to be able to pick up a Sabbath in the middle of next week. And so if you're working for 13 days straight, you're going to be tired, you're going to be grouchy, you're going to be disconnected from your spouse most likely. If you're a Christian, you're probably going to feel disconnected from the Lord. It's really, really important that you make your Sabbath a priority. This is a non-negotiable for me and my wife and my kids. We spend time together either every Saturday or every Sunday, and we always have a date night. We try to plan a date night on Friday nights, and I guess I can make that number 5 is always having a date night together. If you have kids, you know this to be true. When you got married, before you had kids, it was just you and your spouse. Y'all were all up in each other's business. Now that you have kids, it's really easy to just lean on like we're parenting together instead of we still have a very intimate, thriving relationship between you and I. And so what we want to do is we want to remove the kids from the picture if we can for just a couple hours every night, get a babysitter, take the kids to grandma's house or whatever, and get out and just sit down with your spouse and talk about your life. Talk about what's going well. Talk about, and during that time, what could I do better? What are the things right now that you feel like I'm overzealous about, and what are the things that I could be more intentional on, and how can I get better? And just having this intentional conversation, man, it just makes such a difference in the level of trust in your relationship. The last thing I would just say to wrap this up is that whether you are the husband or the wife, you can lead in all these areas. And so you can be super intentional about initiating, because if you're the one starting the business, if you're the one growing the business, then it's your dream that's really pushing it, right? And so we have to show our spouse that we're not going to throw our family to the wayside in order to chase after these dreams, but we're going to make sure that they stay the priority. Because listen, your life, you're probably not going to have this same business in 30 years, most likely. You probably will still have your spouse and your kids. Seasons come and go in business and money. Like there'll be seasons where there's lots of money, seasons where there's not a lot of money. But the one thing that's not going to, if you do it right, that's not going to come and go is your relationship with the man or the woman that you pledged your life to, that you made a covenant relationship with, and then your children. And so the worst thing you could do, the thing I will never ever promote, is being incredibly successful with a business and destroying your home as a result of it. That is not God's plan for you. That's not what I want for you. And so hopefully this podcast and this show has helped you with this. If this has helped you, please just tell me. Let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear your thoughts around this, and give me some feedback. I want to know where you're from, how long you've been married, if you're married, how many kids you got. Would just love to get to connect with you on this. There was a lot of thought that went into this podcast episode, and this is one of the things that's an intangible that not a lot of people think of. They're thinking about what tools to buy, how to get known, all the other things that I spend a lot of time talking about, but they forget, man, if I burn my marriage down trying to grow this business, it was all for nothing. So we're not going to do that. We're going to do it the right way by staying on the same page, setting goals together, being long-term minded, over-communicating, increasing our intimacy with our spouse, resting together, honoring the Sabbath, and doing date nights together. So if you can do those 5 things, you will maintain a really strong, healthy relationship as you also pursue the dreams that God's put in your heart. So with that being said, guys, if you like this episode, if this resonated with you, be sure to click the subscribe button. Be sure to leave us a comment, give us a thumbs up, let us know how this impacted you in a positive way. But other than that, guys, I appreciate you so much. I love you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.